Indigenous. And so even though I know the songs of our ceremonies and I'm learning the language, my Muslim always said, I won't tell you exactly what he said because he used to swear at me a lot. You stupid bugger. He'd say, you still don't get it. But I remember saying to him, oh, Muslim, I got my master's degree in leadership. And he goes, that's good news, Tao. That's good. He says, Stam, come here. And he was standing by the window in his house in Isla Crosse. And he points out and he goes, that's my university, he says. That's my hospital. That's my courts. And he's pointing at the sweat lodge, eh? He's saying, that's where we heal people. That's where we educate people. He goes, it's good you're learning the white man's ways, but don't forget that there's this other way and you need to try and walk with both, he says.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been trying to do ever since. And it's tough. It's difficult. Because as a CEO of a not-for-profit organization, we've got about 75 staff. We're an $8 million organization. Why
don't you tell us the name of your organization?
Sure. But Moh'Kinsstis is the name of our organization, and originally it was Pathways. And we got to the point where the elder said, okay, you need your Cree name. And your Cree name is Moh'Kinsstis. And Moh'Kinsstis translates in Cree to many little roads or pathways. And that name is symbolic in regards to, each of our journeys as staff and as people that come into our circles. Everybody has their own journey, to well-being, to life, to healing and wellness. And it's not for Kirby or Moh'Kinsstis or anybody else to decide. All we can do as Escopios is to, Moh'Kinsstis, let people discover for themselves what that is. All we do is invite them in ceremony. We create opportunities of connection and of understanding where people can come together and feast and sit in ceremony and build relatives, Wakoto and building relatives. And let them discover for themselves what that means. That's all we do as an organization. We offer and we invite.
Beautiful.
You can't, the Western systems, a lot of them are very prescriptive. They're very paternalistic. They're very hierarchical. Ours is not. We worked in some of those systems and still do sometimes. And it's tough for us to function there because there's such a misalignment in how we think and what we want to do, how we want to work with and support our vulnerable families, right? But we need to be there because if we're going to create any sort of change, any sort of systems change, whether it be within our educational systems, our healthcare systems, our justice systems, and our child welfare systems, we got to walk alongside them. Even though we might be at opposite ends of understanding in what our children and families need, we still got to walk with that journey with them because that's where our families are. It doesn't matter what system you look at. There's people. I've been guilty of saying this too. That there's an overrepresentation of Indigenous people within the justice system, within the child welfare system. And an elder corrected me not too long ago, and I just love what he said. He says, you need to reframe that. He says, there's not an overrepresentation of Indigenous people in jails or in the children in child welfare. There's an overrepresentation of Western worldviews imposed on Indigenous peoples. And when he said that, that just resonated with me so much because what it does is that it allows us to kind of let go of some of that anger, some of that resentment, some of that blame, and to create space for how we might move forward differently, how we might move forward together. And I know a lot of people might not agree with that, and that's okay. That's just where I am on my own healing journey. When it comes to child welfare, I've blamed them and pointed the finger at them as to why there's so many Indigenous children in care. And the reality is they're just doing what they know. What do they know? They know the Indian Act. They know, their child welfare system, right? And it's been functioning the same way for so many years. And so there, if you're a government worker, you got legislation and policy that you need to adhere to. So you're actually kind of handcuffed.
Yeah.
This is how. That's why they need us.
Well, how much has it really changed? Like, you've been involved with the child welfare system since 1988, and like, you're the reason my parents got involved as foster parents too. So I mean, like, you guys have seen this for a long time. Like, has there been changes, positive changes for like Indigenous children in foster care in your time working in the system? Have you seen it? Or
That's a really good question, Trent. And part of the answer to that is how do you define change? And so if you're wanting to define change from a systems perspective, in systems reform or transformation, well, you could argue all day long that nothing has changed.
Yeah.
But if you choose to define change from a person's perspective, from an individual's perspective, from a Moh'Kinsstis perspective, I would say that a lot has changed.
Yeah.
And so and you need to think, when you're looking at government too, you need to look at the systems within the system. So within government child welfare, they have an intervention system, and their focus is on safety. And so if they see a child at risk in a home because of alcohol or because of domestic violence or because of poverty, they think the solution is remove the family, right? That's been the typical mindset and practice. Moh'Kinsstis comes in and says, no, that's not the way to do it. If there's no food in that fridge, well, let's put some food in that fridge. Well, if dad's creating domestic violence in there, well, let's remove dad and help dad address that, or let's apprehend the family. That's what they're doing at our reserve, with Chief Red Bear Lodges. They apprehend the whole family. You talk about systems reform. There's 0 children in care on Cowsas First Nation.
Wow.
And that's because of Chief Red Bear Lodge. If there's a safety issue, they apprehend the whole family. You come into Chief Red Bear Lodge and you're here for 90 days. And you're going to address the addictions. We're going to address the domestic violence. We're going to address whatever. And you're going to get supported by the cookums and the mushums and by the culture and the ceremony and the community. 0 children in care,
That's amazing.
And that's happening, I think, with a lot more nations. They're taking control of their child welfare systems, right? So hopefully that's a positive change that we can see, in the future, right? Like we're seeing it on Cowsas right now. If other nations move forward like that, hopefully it'll change the way things are dealt with.
Yeah. And so systems change, systemic change is going to be slow, right? Here's Cowsas First Nation. It's a great story, right? You got Bill C-92 comes in and they create their Moh'Kinsstis Act, which is legislation on their reserve now. So it doesn't matter what chief and council, what the politics are, this is legislation and it's there to stay. And that'll help them guide how they manage the safety of all of their band members, whether they're rural or urban. So you see them now moving into areas like Calgary and starting to build relations and try to figure out how do they support their band members that are living off reserve. Because just like any other reserve, there's only a fraction of their band members that are actually living on the reserve. Yeah. And for many of us, our goal isn't